of the things, of course, we've seen with Xi Jinping is really pushing Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, right? His whole Xi Jinping thought. I love the long names they give everything. It's beautiful. But he seems, compared to Hu Jintao, Jiang Zemin, Deng Xiaoping, he seems more like a true believer in communism than any of his predecessors since Mao. But that's one interpretation of it. Is that your interpretation, that he just really believes in these Marxist ideals, or do you think something else is going on?
He believes in them, but he's not a deep thinker. He's a product of the system. He was not well educated. He hadn't been abroad. He was good at the kind of infighting and backstabbing that one has to be good at in order to rise in that system. And of course, he had a big head start because he was the son of one of Mao's confederates. But I don't think he's a strong intellect. I don't think he believes deeply in anything the way my father did, or the way Wang Meng did, or the other people we've been talking about. He clawed his way to the top. He got rid of Bo Xilai, who's still in prison through this in-party backstabbing fighting. And then he's at the top. And he's a product of the system in that he doesn't have his own agenda or even his own experience or a very deep mind of his own. But he's at the top, so he has to do something. And what Hu Jintao left him in 2012 was a tenuous situation. There was complaints about corruption, and the international relations were going the wrong direction. And there was a rising sense of tension and expectation that China needs to go in a new direction. And here I am. I'm the leader. So what am I going to do? He isn't well read. His two educational degrees were written by ghostwriters. He was only formally educated through what we would call junior high school. His college degree and his so-called graduate degree are on paper stuff that he wasn't educated. So he doesn't know. He'd never been abroad. Mao, for all his faults, had been to the Soviet Union.
I think Xi Jinping went to Iowa, right?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, Xi Jinping was in Iowa briefly. I take it back. I'm sorry, Xi Jinping. But what did he learn in Iowa? He didn't have intellectual resources to draw on, except what he knew best, which was the Mao system that he'd grown through and in which he'd sharpened his tools for bureaucratic infighting and so on. So that's my interpretation of why he turned to Maoist formulas and having the great leader whose great works everybody is supposed to read and then stay in line for. But to say he's a deep Marxist is just wrong. I don't think he's read any Marx.
One of the things you've written about in your book is China's values crisis, like a deep moral crisis. Are you suggesting that perhaps Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era is not able to fill that spiritual crisis?
All right, no, it's not. It's part of the language game that the regime before Xi Jinping, all the way from Mao, plays in order to keep people on the same page and in line. And their instructions sent out to party members, even party members in California, friends of mine here, get on their on their email instructions on studying Xi Jinping's thought on XYZ, and they have to do it, and they have to go through the hoops of believing it. Because they believe it? No. Because Xi Jinping believes it? No. It's a ritual of obeying the leader that the system requires. Exactly what it means is not as important as fealty to the system, my showing that I am part of the system and will not gainsay it. That's the function that's served. Xi Jinping's thoughts on this and that and that and this are empty, and the people who read them or pretend to have read them know that they're empty. It's all theater. But to say it's all theater is not to say it's irrelevant or it's empty. It's empty, but it's not irrelevant. You have to go through that theater to be part of the system. And if you don't, you get in trouble.
Yeah, you've written about this, like two questions that Chinese people think about, which is, how do I perform properly in the system, and how do I get what I want? Yeah, and how they don't really have the same answer, but people kind of gotten used to having to think like this all the time. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I was talking a moment ago about the language game that one has to play in order to deal with the official language, and how that is different from ordinary talk, the way people address each other in daily life. I'll give you an example of it. It's from that year that I spent at Zhongshan University in Guangzhou in the Chinese department doing research. I had a Chinese friend, a professor in the department, who had lived through the Cultural Revolution in very constricted conditions. He and his wife had 2 children, 2 boys, and they had only 2 rooms. One was a bedroom that all 4 of them used, and the other was a front room that had a kitchen and a kitchen table, and that's about it. And they used the kitchen table for their dinner, and then after dinner cleared it, and the boys did their homework on the kitchen table. And then when the boys went to bed, the 2 parents, both of whom were professors, did their professional work on that same table. And that's the kind of living conditions he had. And when I was there had just been announced from Beijing a new policy that intellectuals had been mistreated during the Cultural Revolution. And this was Deng Xiaoping's reform idea. We have to do better by them. So please consider better housing and better access to bicycles and whatever else for intellectuals. So my friend explained to me that he had to go into the party secretary in order to request better housing. But he couldn't go in and just say what I told you, that we only have 2 rooms, and we have 4 people, and we have to use the same table for 3 different functions. That's the reality of daily life. But no, you can't go say that. What he had to do was go and say, could you please consider 落实, bringing down to reality the policies of Party Central's directive number XYZ about the mistreatment of intellectuals? And then the party secretary responds in those kinds of terms, and they put in a case for obeying Party Central's directive. That's the kind of example I mean about the difference between the official level and playing the language game there, and then the unofficial level of life. And when you think of what a Chinese person in that kind of context is doing, at one level, saying what you need to say in order to get what you want to get, and at the other, living daily life and thinking of what you want to. I'm not being clear here, but I think you see the difference. Those 2 different kinds of language require one to ask a question in a different way.
Yeah, it's like you're always playing a game.
You're playing a game. And saying that it's a game is not to say it's fluff or irrelevant. It's very relevant. You have to play the game or you won't get your room.
Did you like what you just saw? Well, check out Perry Link's book, The Anaconda in the Chandelier. The link is below. And if you want to watch the entire hour-long interview with Perry Link with tons of cool stories, check it out on our website, ChinaUncensored.tv. The link for that is below.